Hi, I am so excited to be here today. My name is Tracee. I am with a company by the name of UrVenue. We do technology for experiences. And I am sitting with two powerhouses. I hope you guys realize how incredible these two gentlemen are. Today we're going to be talking about the Las Vegas blueprint, infusing lifestyle and entertainment elements into the luxury hotel experience. A lot of people sit there and be like, well, wait, Vegas is so big, how can that apply to my hotel or resort? But with gentlemen like these two, there are so many ways that you can kind of transfer that level of knowledge and frameworks and approaches to work very well within independent resorts, hotels, you name it. So it doesn't just have to be the scale and size of Las Vegas. So again, so excited to be here. I'm going to have these guys introduce themselves in just a minute. I thought, it might be really important to talk about why is this important? Why are lifestyle and entertainment experiences so important to the hospitality, particularly the luxury hospitality experience? So I'm going to take you through a couple of slides first. I get the boring part. You guys get the exciting part. One thing that we have to remember, and you're probably going to hear this over and over and over again as it relates to, the different sessions that are happening throughout the next 2 days. But we are in the world of an experience economy. And with that, in 2019, with the experience economy, it was a $5.2 trillion business. And fast forward to 2028, the projections are to be a $12 trillion business. That's over 140% increase if I did my math right. That's incredible. So this is the space within hospitality that is exploding. So we have to really look at this and embrace it and figure out how can we take advantage of this and have it perform in the way that we want as it relates to guest experience and revenues. So why is this happening? There are a few, bullet points here. Makes sense. Not only are we in the experience economy, but there are increased accessibility to experiences. It's a lot easier for people to find them, to book them, and make them part of your guest journey, as an example. Technology innovation, again, before, when you have experiences, let's say on a property, it's like, oh, go see the concierge. Well, everybody is living where now? It's on their phones. So we have to be able to bring these experiences front and center in the pre-arrival and in-stay journeys, and generally speaking, that is through technology. Then there is the rise of social media. Everybody wants to look cool. Everybody wants, to look like they're important. And these experiences really make people look interesting, particularly when they start taking photos of where they're at and they put it on social. And then, of course, the consumer behavior is shifting incredibly because of generational influences that are happening right now. And I want to kind of show you an example. I think this is so interesting. When you take a look at the U.S. population broken out by generational segments, 42% of the population prioritizes experiences over products and expenditures. That is, insane. So really, we're kind of focused in on the millennials and the Gen Zs. Not saying boomers and Gen Xs don't enjoy experiences, they do, but they don't hold them in the highest regard like millennials and Gen Zs do. And then, if you take a look at spending, how people are spending their money, that little dotted yellow line is the average annual growth in overall personal consumption. So basically what people spend. You can look at, these are examples of all different types of experiences, from sports, amusement parks, clubs, hotels, gaming. You can see how much higher each one of these experiences are as it relates to expenditures. So we're in the experience economy. We have generational shifts that are happening where people value these experiences and they're spending more money on it. So I thought I'd share a couple of these, which I think are kind of interesting. Just little stats. 78% of millennials choose to spend money on experiences over products. Gen Zs, and I think this one's really interesting, they value what's called unquantifiable qualities. So that's such as like living in the moment, being happy, bonding with friends, or work-life balance, right? So you think about that, and then you think about how social has exploded and how it actually kind of supports these things. But if there aren't the experiences, then they can't have these things. 78% of Gen Zs and millennials feel the concept of retirement needs to be modernized. I thought that was interesting. And instead of saving for homes, 57% are prioritizing savings for travel instead. So that's like, so I'm not going to save for retirement, I'm going to save to travel. So you start to see how all of these things are coming together and why experiences are absolutely critical when it comes to the luxury hospitality offering. And, you know, for me, I always challenge as it relates to our industry, you know, we usually call experiences ancillary, right? And so you look up the definition of ancillary, and that means secondary. And I'm like, no. We should not be calling them ancillary experiences anymore because they are primary. They are more important than your hotel room today. So really looking at, you know, your property, you know, what real estate do you have on your property that you can program or activate, can really make a very, very big difference in kind of hopping on and really riding that wave as, you know, the world is really, really starting to move towards this. So just, you know, a little bit of background there. So that is the why. The world is changing, guys. And it's very, very important to make experiences a big and center part of your programming as it relates to properties. So with that being said, I've got, like I said, two icons sitting next to me. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. Hopefully they're going to share a little bit about their backgrounds and not be so modest, because these guys, their work is all over the Las Vegas Strip and beyond. And why don't you introduce yourselves, tell a little bit about, and then actually, Jason, why don't you go first? Can you also then define what you characterize entertainment experiences to be?
Sure. So thanks everyone for coming, and thanks Tracee. I thought that was excellent background to really set the tone of what we're going to talk about. I'm Jason Gastwirth, managing partner of Interstate 15 Sports and Entertainment. It's a full-service consulting firm and talent management company that we actually just started at the beginning of this year. So we're very young in our development, but it's grown really nicely, and we have a great set of clients as we think of consulting to sports, entertainment, and hospitality. I've been in Las Vegas for 18 years, started in Las Vegas as head of entertainment at Las Vegas Sands, so Venetian Palazzo and their Asian properties, then became chief marketing officer at Palms, and for the last 13 years before starting Interstate 15, served as president of entertainment at Caesars Entertainment. We saw a massive evolution of entertainment in the marketplace, proud to play a role in starting this wave of headliner residencies that we see now, starting with Britney Spears. That was the first Vegas pop residency, and leading to a tremendous set of headliners to follow. And before I left Caesars, with Adele, Garth Brooks, and the Killers. So it really is a lifeblood of the market here, along with sports and nightlife. I think for entertainment, it's very much, you know, as Tracee said, the primary reason in some ways of what someone's going to experience around everything else. So certainly we can think about live entertainment, which has been my focus, and now sports as well. But anything that sort of ranges into things that are not the functional. So if we think too, entertainment largely thought about, you see this a lot in the restaurant space now. People are looking not just for a great meal, but ambiance, service, socialization, and how that actually flows within what we think more generally of entertainment, more traditionally of things that might be ticketed, like live shows. And I'll just give a little bit of tidbit of the importance of that in this market in particular, but this certainly goes with, as you think about different hospitality properties and the role it plays. Las Vegas Convention Visitors Authority did research that the primary reason why visitors would come to Las Vegas is because of entertainment. I think we've seen that nightlife was included in that. This was really before sports, and everything else that Las Vegas was known for, whether you think of great hotel product, room product, food and beverage, gaming, obviously. People were booking their trips way in advance of saying, I'm going to see that show, I'm going to see that sporting event, and then everything else would follow. of booking their travel plans, of booking their hotels. So I think this is why you've seen the evolution here, certainly in Las Vegas, and it's becoming increasingly an important part of just overall hospitality.
That's great. Thanks. Nick?
Hi, thanks for being here. My name is Nick McCabe. Spent the majority of my career here in Las Vegas, primarily as the CEO of Hakkasan Group during their growth phase. So the last time I think I sat next to Jason in a conference room, we were negotiating the building of a $100 million nightclub, successfully, I might add. So it's nice to be back together. And subsequent to Hakkasan, I spent a few years based in Ibiza as a CEO of Pacha Group. Pacha, some of you may know, is one of the most legendary nightlife brands in the world, in what we would call sort of the heart of dance music over in Ibiza, but was a company that had a roster of brands, Pacha being one, Leo being another, which was a big supper club concept out there, which is sort of ripe for growth, Destino Hotel, and a few other smaller ones, and helped those guys figure out a business plan, a growth plan, and ultimately sold the company late last year. And so as far as sort of luxury lifestyle is concerned, to me, hospitality is lifestyle. They are one and the same. You know, having worked with various private equity firms, sovereign wealth funds, family offices down the years, there is all this noise around hospitality, and especially when you get to the nightlife piece, it's really scary, right? It's this sort of big behemoth that, you know, causes a lot of stress and a lot of panic with investors. And really, when you distill it down, I used to say that any great strategy should be very definable in very few words, and to me, it was about two things. It was experience and it was access. And so the idea is, everything begins with experience in hospitality. You got to nail that piece. If the experience isn't in place, no matter how hard you market, how much you advertise, you will ultimately fail. But let's assume a great experience is in place. The way in which you manage access to that experience is a huge part of success in nightlife. Access does two things. It creates desire, and it creates loyalty. And those are emotional parts of hospitality which really matter when it comes to creating lasting concepts. And so it's, you know, managing that part of the business and doing that effectively is a way in which you really get people connected with your brand, right? So an example I would give, not from my own stable, so from somebody else's is, there's an incredible concept out of Ibiza called John Dal. John Dal is probably the hottest restaurant in Europe right now, the hottest reservation to get. It's ripe for growth. It's going to explode across the world. And John Dal was set up by a friend of mine, a guy who was my right-hand person over at Pacha when I was over there, and created a great experience. Now, there's nothing particularly glamorous about it. It's not gold-plated. It's nothing sort of crazy about the overall aesthetic. It's an incredible restaurant with incredible food in a beautiful place. What was clever about John Dal in terms of access was, my friend who opened it said, okay, my marketing budget is zero, nothing. My advertising budget is zero. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open a great place with incredible food and great service, and I'm going to start by inviting some friends. And so one day he came to me and said, I'm opening today, do you want to come for lunch? Okay, great. There was maybe 15 people in the room at that time. It was all 15 of the right people, but very few. I went back a couple of weeks later, it was maybe 50 people there. And for the entire first season, it was very controlled in terms of who attended. The idea being, I just want the right people in my room. I want to give access to those people who matter on the island, who will spread the word for me. If I believe in my experience, and I control access to it, I'll be successful. Fast forward to today, in its third or fourth season, and it is probably the hottest restaurant out there. It's very hard to get into. I probably get 1-2 calls a week during season from industry people wanting to get a reservation there. And this isn't because they want some kind of bullshit, you know, French person at the front door aesthetic or velvet ropes. It's because they want to make sure they have the right people in there, right? So the people who would like to go and spray champagne and drink shots of tequila are not welcome. It's about the right vibe in there. And that access control has driven a respect in the industry for the brand, which wasn't driven by marketing. And to this day, there is zero marketing budget, there's zero advertising budget. They don't do a lot of social media, despite the fact that I agree with you, Tracee, on the importance of that. It's simply about creating a great experience and then using access as a way to drive loyalty with their consumer. And to me, those two words just distill luxury hospitality.
So as it relates to Las Vegas and some lessons that can be learned from it, I mean, Las Vegas has been incredible insofar as reinventing itself over and over again. So obviously there's a level of creativity there and much more than that. So how and why do you think Las Vegas can sustain that, and what can this group learn from that as it relates to being able to sustain and constantly one-up yourselves over and over and over again?
Well, reason one is money. Let's be honest, right? The revenue in Vegas is what drives the innovation. I think it attracts some of the brightest and best in the industry to this market. But, you know, evolution is everything in Vegas, right? I think you have this constant desire for the next and the new, and that's driven a lot of innovation in the industry. It's also driven a lot of crossover, and I think one of the most interesting trends you'll see today is the sort of walls between what is a restaurant, what is a nightclub, what is a live music venue, what is a sports venue, are being broken down. You know, and I'm a little bit biased in this view, but the influence of nightlife and nightlife methodologies has become outsized, I think, in this market, right? What does that mean? If I take a live music venue, for example, right? If we go back in the day with Jason to the Coliseum, there probably were no VIP tables, right? It was seats, and you buy your seat, and maybe you pay a little bit more for this one than you pay for that one, but that's the entire economy. Today, if I go to Dolby Live, for example, to see a residency, I have a VIP table there. I have VIP service. I buy bottles. I have that nightlife component. And what's happened is that has started to sort of leak over into every part of hospitality. So restaurants, for example, I'm sure a lot of people in this room have been trying to make their reservations for this week. Let's say the 3 hardest reservations to get right now in this market are probably Delilah, Pappy Steak, and Carbone. Right? I'd argue those are the 3 most popular restaurants. Whether you think they're the best or not is sort of academic. They're certainly the most successful. Now, why is that? 2 of those 3 restaurants were set up by what you call nightlife groups, right? Guys like us who were sort of the redheaded stepchildren of hospitality back in the day, right? Our stuffy French counterparts with their pocket squares didn't really like us very much because we didn't go to Lausanne Hospitality School. But there's a work ethic and there's a way to drive desire, like I talked about before, within nightlife that applies to all hospitality. And so both Pappy Steak and Delilah came from nightlife groups. Carbone didn't, but certainly the guys behind it understand nightlife and understand how nightlife works. And so the process of gaining a reservation, the process of gaining access to that space is not easy, but it gives you a sense of success. It validates you to eat there. And that causes this desire to continue growing exponentially. So I think, to me, that's one of the more interesting trends in the market is elements that you think of as nightlife have sort of spilled over. So a great other example would be Stadium Swim at Circa. Stadium Swim, in theory, is a sports book, right? But it's a sports book in which you buy cabanas, you buy a piece of real estate, you order bottles, you do all the things you do in a normal day club, but now I'm at a sports-oriented venue. And so those walls are really broken down. And I do think, again, it's self-serving, but that will begin to happen in the hotel business and even gaming. I think you'll see those influences start to spill over.
So Jason, anything from your point?
Yeah, I mean, I always say that you can have a great 2-week vacation in 2 nights in Las Vegas because there's everything you could possibly want to do here, and I think it sort of builds on it. You know, obviously, money plays an important role in that, but you have close proximity and all of these different amenities in a small area. I think also there's an expectation in this market now to offer the absolute best. So when you think about that, this is such a great destination. I go back to thinking where there was a time that it was very rare, for instance, to have meet and greets with artists, and it was really reserved for those that would be high-end gamers. And then as the headliner residencies rolled out more, this became something that was available on a retail basis, just as you could, you know, buy yourself into having the best table at a nightclub to be able to actually meet these individuals. And it really created a live entertainment business that ultimately was more attractive to artists because they were obviously able to partake in that revenue. But that became something too where it's like you can basically experience the best that the world offers here and have a way to get to it. One with, again, relationships, which are extremely important, as Nick said. We'll go into a little bit of that. But 2, also just an ability to buy things that normally money couldn't buy. So I think there's that aspect of it. And then I think it's an interesting market here, and this is probably similar to some other markets outside of Las Vegas, is that there is hyper competition and collaboration in this market at the same time, right? My competitors, when I was at Caesars in the other entertainment groups, are some of my closest friends because we had so much respect for each other, and we would go after shows, and if we wouldn't get an artist, we'd congratulate them and love to come to their shows, and because we knew that we were building a market here that was going to help everybody. And I think we've certainly seen that with some of the venues that aren't necessarily even affiliated with a property, whether that be Allegiant or whether that be with T-Mobile in some respect and some of the others. It's actually helped out the entire city. And even shows that are at these particular properties do so as well. So I think with all of that, it's really this push to be the best you possibly can for your own property, promoter, whatever it may be. But together, everyone's really building this incredible destination that we see today.
No, and I think that's really interesting. I mean, even just the concept of what you're talking about, a meet and greet. Granted, I understand we're talking about like a big headliner, but you can do that at your property as well without a big headliner. That's your executive chef. That's, your GM. I mean, there are a lot of ways to take some of these concepts and alter them so they work within your property. Somebody would love to be able to be like, oh, GM, let me get a picture with the GM, right? Again, going back to that social media, it's like the more interesting you can make somebody by thinking about what you can do for a customer on your property, and you really start to look at the pockets. And when I say real estate, I'm not talking real estate in the sense of, oh, okay, there's that. It's more of, oh, do I have a beautiful, lawn that overlooks, the water, or do I have beachfront, or do I have, you've got to look at all these different components and think about how can I actually activate these with things that I actually already have today. That can make it very, very interesting. So I just think that while I know we do it on a much larger scale here, there's so much that does transfer over. So, asking, kind of on that topic, when we think about these tried and true methodologies, as it relates to implementing, the right programming for entertainment or the right programming for lifestyle, the things that we've seen and done here, could you help explain a couple of those and maybe we can talk a little bit about how that can translate over actually into a Las Vegas resort.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes down to first understanding the customer of who you have today and also who you're trying to attract, and both are important. And I'll use the example again as we think back those years as we contemplated booking Britney Spears. We saw, it was interesting, over 1 year, the average age of the Las Vegas visitor went down by like 4 or 5 years. Like, it was this massive, massive push below, and it was in large part, I think, driven by nightlife, that you were bringing in people to this market, and they didn't have really anything to do of note between dinner and going to the nightclub. So that was a clearly identifiable market need that not everyone saw, but it was clear, that it was. And then it was like, okay, so who do you actually go and serve that need? And in large part, someone who would appeal to everyone in their 20s up to their 40s was someone that was going to be attractive for that. So that gave us a lot of confidence there. And then we saw, again, that you could really build around that with all the restaurants and things like that. And that's where we saw this. At the same point, it was really important to realize that there are people of higher age that were continuing to come and not forget about them, right? So we were proud to have the likes of Donnie and Marie Osmond and Wayne Newton. And it was like something for everybody that I think, one of the challenges there, again, is how do you appeal to those different customer segments but have it all together? When I was at Caesars, we had multiple properties, so we certainly could think through a larger portfolio and addressing that need. But I'll give you an example. When I was at Palms, which was, George Maloof had this brilliant view of attracting at the time, like those that were interested in the hottest nightlife and restaurants, and then locals that were most interested in playing slot machines. And in fact, there are two different entrances that come in for Palms, because it would be locals would come in one way and visitors would come in the other way. And the age groups were vastly different, let alone where they were. And there was a view there that, like, here's a property, just one that could actually serve both of those needs. So I think at the end of the day, customer first, content to be able to satisfy that need, and then really more than anything, being able to amplify it and make sure it's integrated into all other aspects of the business that you can really capitalize on it.
Nick, do you have anything to add?
Well, I think you have to be careful to think about scale too, right? We're obviously sitting here, I'm guessing, in a room full of people who don't necessarily operate in Las Vegas. And so the concept of content to me doesn't just mean big artists, right? We've all booked the big guys, and it's a very quick way to fill a room. But I think content is experiences, right, as we got to before. So, the average hotel operator, let's say I have a bar space, right? It can be a cocktail bar, I'm sure it can be perfectly fine, and people will drift in and out. The second you put a door in front of it and require a password to get in and call it a speakeasy, all of a sudden the desire to get in grows exponentially. So there are creative ways to think about content that aren't necessarily, I'm going to pay $1 million to Britney Spears.
A lot more than that.
But it's content creation exists at all levels, right? It simply requires creativity and thought about what's going to drive that desire with the customer. What are they looking for? What sets you apart a little bit from Hotel XYZ down the street? in what way can you use real estate, Tracee, to your point, in a creative way to continue to drive that desire and create a more interesting experience around the overall property? Because truly, there is no separation anymore between, okay, well, I have a hotel, and then there's a food and beverage department that has the restaurants, and then somebody operates a bar, and maybe I have a small lounge. The entire thing has to be integrated, and if it's not, it's just the wrong approach, right? Vegas has been the king of integration, right? There is, as Jason pointed out, a fairly seamless relationship, you'd like to think, between all of the various amenities available to you in any casino here in Vegas. But that's true of hospitality the world over, right? The more that a hotel facility can feel like an entire experience where there is no division between those departments or experiences, the far better it is from a customer perspective.
No, and I think it's critical, obviously, is, when we think about the slides that we started with, that we have to put the customer front and center, and really, think outside the box. And, sometimes we get so stuck in kind of the day-to-day that we have to kind of pull ourselves out and really start to think about, wow, we know customers want experiences. What do I have on my property? What is my brand promise I'm trying to deliver? I mean, there's a lot of different pieces, and then really start thinking outside the box. It's amazing when you look at properties how much opportunity is there. And then, if once you start, building out those programs, testing different things, you'll see and you'll learn as we have here in Las Vegas. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Has anything bombed here?
There's been some things, but I think ultimately, I mean, that's the great thing, is that it's so vibrant, and I think even as we look at these hotels and other things, try some things out. I mean, do all of the homework that one can, but you don't know until you do it. And how do you hear that feedback of being in a position where you can actually change things around and really appeal to the customers as they're coming in? So I think we've seen a lot of that, but then fortunately this is a market where it changes over quickly, and there's things that have lasted here for decades. So I think once it's there, it becomes something that's really solid.
So if you do it right, what type of metrics are we looking at? Like, what do you guys look at when you measure, from an entertainment perspective or a lifestyle perspective? I can kind of throw out there, I'm assuming guest experience, revenues, but it'd be really interesting to get your feedback, because from my understanding, these impact a lot of different departments across, like in a very positive way.
Well, this is one where you have to be careful, right? So, there's the Excel spreadsheet answer, and then there's the true answer, right? So I'll try and hit both of those, because I have sat in front of a shitload of private equity guys in my time. So the challenge is this, right? So if I take, let's say, the Delano in Miami, right? Let's say that was a property before it became the Delano as we know it today. And if I gave it to Hilton, Marriott, one of the big boys, I'm sure it would be perfectly fine and serviceable, and the distribution network would be effective, and they'd fill the rooms. But I give it to Ian Schrager, who thinks about it in a completely different manner, and thinks about it on an integrated basis and creates an entire experience from the whole hotel. The ADR and occupancy is drastically different. Now, what does that look like? That's hard to say, right? And the challenge is, in some aspects in hospitality, you have to have the courage of your convictions, right? The story I told before about John Dahl. So that project came to us as Pacha first, as potential investors. And the private equity firm I was with said, no, thank you, we don't get it. The business plan doesn't stack up, we don't like the numbers. My friend who operated it never did an Excel spreadsheet in his entire life. Somebody of his put it together in 5 minutes. What he knew was, if I do this right, we'll be successful. I think this is something that you really have to understand in hospitality is the facts and figures will follow, right? Ultimately, if the experience is right and you manage access correctly, everything will follow that. And that's the hard part of selling some of these ideas is it doesn't always pay off day one. When I say courage of your convictions, there may be a year, 2 year, 3 year life cycle in establishing a brand. A brand like Omnia, for example, when we opened here in Las Vegas, you'd like to think when you spend $100 million to build a nightclub and you book Calvin Harris and Tiesto and all the big people, that everybody coming to town knows about it. And the truth is, very few do. The content drove that nightclub for at least the first 3 years. It was, I'm going to go see Calvin Harris. I'm going to go see Martin Garrix. Not, I want to go to Omnia. And I'd say it was only in, call it year 4, year 5, where the bulldog was kind of done being pushed uphill and started to roll down, and the brand equity started to carry it to an extent. But it takes a long time. And, at the time we were owned by a sovereign wealth fund, we had a huge amount of discussions around the economics of the place. Were we doing well? Were we not? What does success look like? What are those metrics? And so I'm kind of dodging your question in a way, but the truth is yes. I mean, the easy answer is there are endless KPIs we can establish as hospitality people, but you ultimately have to be in your venue, look at the people. Are they smiling? Are they having a great time? Is there desire? Are they telling friends? It's some of those much more nebulous sort of metrics that to me are a little bit more important at first. and the numbers follow.
I think that's right, and and I think it's an important note, Nick, of the short-term and longer-term view, and sometimes you don't get to control that. So, but a lot of it goes into just goal setting of what's important to you and why you're doing it in the first place. We always looked at it where it's like if we can have a successful business in its own right, but what else does it mean for the rest of the business? And that goes beyond things that are easier to quantify in some ways of overall business to other areas, whether it's hotel, gaming, restaurants. It's even building brand equity and what you stand for, and are you reaching new audiences? I think a lot with entertainment, and this wasn't just in Las Vegas as we thought about entertainment in venues in all the other markets that Caesars operated. It was how is it serving for new customer acquisition that would actually introduce new people to the properties? How is it there to actually reward loyalty for those who are coming? Getting the message out. I mean, I always make the argument that that entertainment is a great. There's marketing effectiveness to it because it is driving a lot of social media. You actually have paid marketing to drive ticket sales, but meanwhile you're promoting everything else that you're doing. So I think it's really setting those things up. And at the end of the day, this is where it comes in, where sometimes you're veering one way or the other, and you really have to see, like, is that really what you wanted? But generally, if it all hangs together, that's where the magic comes from, just content overall.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And in my experiences, I've absolutely seen when things are programmed right, is really customer satisfaction, it's loyalty. I've seen our valet business increase. I've seen our restaurant business increase. As you said, Nick, ADR. There are a lot of positives, particularly if you are building, in particular, let's say a lifestyle or entertainment kind of destination. And Nick, you have such an interesting example of opening up Omnia in Bali, right? Which was not a place that's easy to get to. It really was a destination, and what ended up happening?
Yeah, it was huge. So we were contacted by a potential partner over in Bali during the sort of heyday of Hakkasan. They'd seen Omnia open in Hakkasan and wanted this sizzle in their property. The property they owned was called Alila Villas in an area called Uluwatu in Bali. Beautiful part of the world, completely idyllic, gorgeous, and dead. Just nobody there. So they're running at 35% occupancy. I think when I went there to visit, it was around peak season. The owner invited me to dinner in the hotel's restaurant. We were the only people in the entire place. So it was beautiful. You go there, with your wife, you hang out, fantastic. But there was no life to it. And so they said, okay, what will it take for us to enliven this? What can we bring? So we did our homework. We understood what the customer looked like there. And essentially in Bali, you have sort of two key customers that come into town. One are local Indonesians from Jakarta and beyond, and the other is Australians. A huge amount of surfers there. And at the time, it was a very sort of laid-back area. Lots of sort of, spit and sawdust kind of surf venues that served Corona and shrimp. And so we said, okay, we think there's an appetite for electronic music here. We know what that looks like across Asia from other venues. And so we spent a significant amount of their money building Omnia, which is now called, I think, Savaya over there. But an incredible clifftop venue, roughly 1,000-person capacity. So it was a combination of day club, nightclub, restaurant, kind of, as I said before, a hybrid, a kind of amalgamation of all the best, and launched it with some very significant talent. And you went from 35% occupancy to a packed house every single weekend. So the hotel was massively in demand. The buzz grew. Can't tell you exactly what the economics were there, but I'm not sure the owner really cared. The owner was a little bit more in it for the style business and the cool than he was for the economics. For sure, they were making a lot of money. But I think there was a transformation, right? It was a way in which we brought content, and like I said before, content not just meaning the DJs that played, but the venues that were built, and added something which just changed the game in the market. And that's another part I think of the business is changing the game and making decisions is not, again, about the biggest check necessarily. It's what can you do differently from the guy down the street that somebody else hasn't thought of? What can you be courageous and create an experience that hasn't been done, and not look for, well, the bar worked down the street there, so I'll do my own version of that, but look to bring something new to a market. And I think Omnia in Bali was kind of that definition of a brand new type of experience that worked incredibly well and brought a customer who maybe didn't travel ever.
No, that's great. So that's actually a really good segue into my next question, which is, where do I even begin? Right? If I want to start programming my property, right? There's different ways, obviously, we can program from a simple meet and greet, right, as it relates to a chef, but all the way through to maybe we need to look at, potential entertainment opportunities or potential lifestyle and nightclubs, day clubs, lounges, destination type experiences that really do put you on the map and really feed and fuel, obviously the experience seekers that are there today. Where does somebody begin?
I mean, I'd say, certainly, again, what's the strategic vision and what you're trying to achieve. But think about, what happens if you don't do those things? Like I just say, think boldly. And that doesn't require, by the way, like massive capital investment or, investing in, in high-priced talent all the time. It's trying to differentiate your product offering and finding a way to really stand by that and what you represent, and then finding the best way to reach audiences to really demonstrate it. And I think that's a great example when you have people who have a great experience. A lot of it is just the excellence of your teams and how well they service the customer and really, do all the right things in sort of, I'd say, like the soft upselling, where you're, again, meeting a customer need versus really pushing, additional food product or whatever it may be. And then you're going to learn a lot from that. But I think in certain cases we sometimes see in hospitality where they're like, okay, we need to have these 3 different types of cuisine, and we're not really going to brand it all that much, and we're going to make sure, that it's a nice room, but what does it really represent? To me, there's an area where no matter what market you're in, you can really stand out in a way that's going to just give you a competitive edge. And I think then we do see it in the financials with everything from occupancy rates, spend per visitor. That just gives you greater confidence to push into it more.
Anything you want to add, Nick?
Yeah, one thing. I mean, you have a couple of consultants up on stage, right? So I think it needs to be said is I've seen an incredible number of projects where owners really managed to capture failure from the jaws of success, which was not engaging the right people early enough, right? There are an incredible number of projects, and I'm not just talking about small markets, I'm talking Vegas too, right? And I won't name names, but you know who I'm talking about. Where, there is an arrogance, right? Whether it's an arrogance driven by wealth, whether it's an arrogance driven by overconfidence, that I know best. I saw this cool restaurant, I get how it works, I can build my own version of that. We're not engaging the right people, right? So there was so many times we get approached, especially in the Hakkasan days, because it was such a powerful brand in dining. I would say, yeah, I have a restaurant space, it's perfect for you guys, come to Dubai, come to Shanghai, come to London, come check it out. And you'd walk into these spaces, like, what the fuck were you thinking, right? You built this entire hotel and spent £100 million and designed everything to the nth degree, except you forgot about the one space that people are going to get most excited about. And you put all the columns in there, and the access is terrible, or the entrance is off the street, so nobody has to pass through your lobby to actually get there, so it's not going to enliven your property. And so really, if you go all the way back to the first principles of how to develop a successful hospitality venue, it's engage the right partners early. And whether that means adding the correct people to your team from an employee standpoint, whether that means recruiting the right consultants, it doesn't start with design necessarily, right? There are some great designers and architects out there, but I can't tell you how many I know that don't really understand the business very well, right? The best approach is true collaboration. When we designed Omnia, we worked with Rockwell, right? We wanted to choose a prestigious firm that would say something about the kind of venue we were trying to build. We wanted something timeless. We wanted something that would stand up, as you pointed out, Jason, for decades. But I can tell you, if we left it to them, we would have fucked it up royally. It took the operators, and I don't just mean executives like myself, but the guys who are actually selling the tables, the guys who are operating, the guys who are figuring out how to staff the place, to input into the layout. And it was only when we did that that we were truly successful. I'd say with Hakkasan, we were 75% successful. We designed a great venue and it was very successful. But we missed some stuff. And we missed some stuff because we rushed it and we didn't engage everybody we should have engaged. With Omnia, it was a truly collaborative process. It was getting input from all those people who had to operate it on a day-to-day basis, and making sure we met their needs. And when you do that, it really does work.
So as it relates to tools, of course, my favorite, technology guys. Help me understand a little bit of how you've seen that side evolve, particularly when we consider the guest experience, particularly when we talk about pre-arrival or in-stay. I mean, especially when it comes to kind of connecting the dots between guest experience, revenues, technology. I'd love some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think the customer journey has been broadened where, when they're first engaging and thinking about, going to your show or your restaurant, trying to get a sense ultimately of why they chose to ultimately book with you, whether that be a ticket or a reservation. and then this opportunity to communicate with the guest way before they get there. You know, you see this now in live entertainment, which is standard now, but wasn't before, the know before you go, right? If you're going in and you sort of, it was intimidating when you go to these theaters or these stadiums and actually what you're going to do, the fact that all of that can happen now, then they're enjoying the experience versus stressing out of actually how to do it. Especially as I've unfortunately experienced many times when shows get canceled or whatever it may be. That's a great way to get in touch with customers so they don't show up at your front door and no one's performing that night. But then I think also you're in a scenario too where you're understanding who your customers are. And one of the great advances, which I'm sure what UrVenue covers as well, is that it's not only understanding those who have made the booking, but also who's actually going with them. And I think there's been this drive ultimately to mobility where, you know, with electronic ticketing, that you're getting a better sense of all the guests who are going. So it's actually was a wonderful thing when people are transferring their ticket to their group, because then you actually knew not just the purchaser, but everything about the others to basically serve them better. And then it's after the experience, getting that feedback, you know, is there anything you can learn from there? And then hopefully they enjoyed it and really understanding of how to go and ultimately promote other events that you're doing, you know, having the sense of like events. So I think it's become very powerful. I think in something with systems, there's always that view of, oh, you know, is that sort of, you know, creepy in some ways. I think if you do that, you're just not doing it well, because again, you're looking to serve a customer need. And if you're actually communicating with them something they're interested in, they'll appreciate it. If you're not doing your homework and you're actually pushing out things that are not of interest to them, then they feel in some ways that is disruptive. So I think it's a big part of it, of driving future business, but also making sure to refine your guest experience throughout.
I have to ask, was that our timer that just went off? Yes. No, that's okay. That's all right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because I didn't really see what time we started at, so obviously I'm not doing my job as monitoring the time. But I just wanted to really quickly open it up to see if there's any questions. Again, these two gentlemen just have such amazing experience with this. You know, we'll also be here afterwards if you want to chat with us for a few minutes as well. But are there any questions at all? Anybody? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you see any pushback with monetizing these experiences? Because Vegas used to be filled with, and still does, the Bellagio fountains, Mirage, Volcano, all of these like free entertainment experiences to attract you in. But a lot of that free entertainment has vanished in Vegas, being replaced, I think, by Britney Spears and Adele. Have you seen a shift of engagement because you've monetized it?
I think I was always proud when there were shows that actually had a wide pricing architecture, because it gave an opportunity for however someone wanted to experience the show to buy into it how they wanted to. And it was also our job to make sure that someone who bought the least expensive ticket still had the most amazing time. So I think there's that aspect of it. I think at the end of the day, it is important to think through those and how they value certain things and what they're willing to spend into. We see it that sometimes people will buy the least expensive hotel room and then spend money on the best table at a nightclub. You know, you know, so I think it ultimately, you know, comes down to everything there. That being said, you know, it's also like a lot of let's say the lounge entertainment has gone away over time. But if you really create that great bar experience, then it's worth it, because then people are buying drinks and they choose to engage that way. But it's certainly, by the way, something that we think about. I think ultimately, if you're in a scenario in a market where you start outpricing your customers, they stop coming. And that's a really bad thing. But I think ultimately, if you can provide them that greater value, and I will say for some of our highest price shows, I would always see, and people said, absolutely worth the money, you over-delivered. Like that's the most important thing. I think if you get to the point where they feel like it was too expensive, then you've lost them a little bit.
I think there was another question. Yes. Yes.
Thanks, guys. Could you speak a little bit more to, I think, Nick, you were speaking about making sure you have the right partners in place. And that's from the, let's say, the properties perspective. But could you speak to from a vendor's perspective? If you have, like, for example, I have an entertainment company and I want to be that partner and find these, local boutique establishments. Could you speak a little bit more from, like, coming from that perspective, how to approach?
Yeah, be ready for rejection. That's that's the first and most important one, because honestly, it doesn't matter how much success you have behind you. You got to knock down the doors. I mean, there is no secret sauce. I think there are ways now to use social media really intelligently. There are ways to think about digital marketing and at least figure out an ROI from marketing efforts that's more meaningful than it used to be. But truthfully, it really is proving yourself, right? I mean, our company. It's great that we have these sexy titles on the screen, but realistically, the company that we formed here was called Angel Management Group way back in the day, which probably won't be on anybody's radar. We were a hospitality consultancy or a nightlife consultancy all the way back in 2007, and we took every crappy failing venue that existed in this market that nobody else wanted and tried to turn them around. And we didn't turn everyone around. We were successful here and there, but by doing so, we cut our teeth on a couple of small venues with MGM, and we built a reputation with them. One day they wanted to open a day club called Wet Republic. Came to us and said, look, we have 45,000 square feet. We designed what was supposed to be a European day club, which basically means topless day club, right, in this market. And we fucked up. It's way too big. Now what can we do? And so we stepped in there and booked some DJs and brought some talent and opened a successful venue. That's where we started to get our reputation. But it took a good, 3-4 years of taking all the stuff that nobody wanted to get there, So I think there are techniques now, like I said, from a digital marketing standpoint, that allow you to at least get your message across in a very targeted way, which are useful. But realistically, if you're a vendor in a given market, it's really pounding the doors. It's hitting the streets. It's taking 99 no's and just waiting for that one yes that really positions you well.
Great. And any other questions? I know we're kind of pushing on the time. Anyone else? Any last parting words of wisdom, guys?
I think we covered it.
No, I know. Well, thank you, everybody, so much. We really appreciate you being here and listening. Again, there's just, so much incredible experience sitting on this stage here, especially as it relates to these experiences. I just hope everybody goes out there and starts thinking outside the box and realize that this too can happen to you too, and the time is ripe for it. So best of luck, everybody, and thank you.
Thank you.